Alright guys, so in this video we're checking out the iFlight Baby Nazgul 73mm version. So in the box, get a USB, micro USB cable, get a spare set of these 40mm gem fan props, and of course spare screws, Allen wrench, and screwdriver, standard stuff. Of course, here's the box. This is the battery I flew it with, GNB 450 mAh 1S with the PH 2.0 connector. This does come with the rolled or folded pin PH2 connector. If you guys are wondering, yeah, it probably wear out eventually and you'll probably need to replace that. Not a big deal. You can get those pretty much anywhere. But yeah, this is basically the 73mm version of the Baby Nazgul that they made, I think, in direct response to the Flywoo model, and I will get to the comparison a little bit later in the video. They originally made a 63mm version, which I did not review, and I know that a lot of you guys asked me why I chose not to review that version, and I just looked at the specs, the weight, and the flight time. The expected flight time was fairly low, like around 1.5 to 2 minutes on a 1S 300 mAh LiPo, and I decided, well, knowing the complaints, the raging complaints I would get in the comment section about terrible flight time, I was like, well, it wasn't not really worth it for me to review that, knowing that I was going to get hundreds of complaints about low flight time. And so that's why I didn't review it. And, you know, the Flywoo came out. Great flight time on this one. Again, I'll talk more about that a little later, but let's talk about this one. So, you know, very minimalistic. I think it's like a 1mm bottom plate and maybe 0.5 mm top plate. 1S flight controller board. I think, yeah, this one is it has a built-in D8 SPI receiver, FreeSky, of course. The video transmitter there you can see on top is only 25 or 50 milliwatts, and it does connect via these pins right there to the main board, so no wires, so it does reduce weight a little bit there. The micro USB port comes out of the bottom here. You have a TPU strap here for the LiPo. It's on the bottom, so it's, they switched from a top-mounted to a bottom-mounted battery setup here. Got the RunCam Atom for the FPV camera, plus this little TPU mount to hold the camera in place, and it is a fixed angle. Now, for those of you that are worried about the range of the SPI D8 receiver, you can put on a external receiver there. There are two pads there for another UART for a UART2, is a T2 and an R2 there that you could potentially solder on an Express LRS receiver, Crossfire, whatever, if you want more range. But again, 50 milliwatt video transmitter. How far away are you planning on going on just 50 milliwatts of power? You know, I think D8's probably going to be just fine for this setup. 0802 motors here, 17,000 kV, so lower kV than on the 63mm version. On the 451S, if you're just cruising around, you're going to get approximately a 6-minute flight on this setup here. If you're doing more aggressive flying, trying to do acro tricks, racing, that kind of thing, you're going to get closer to a 3-minute flight, maybe a little bit more than 3 minutes. So those are the averages that I got on this battery, which barely, and I mean barely, fit in here. This TPU strap is designed for this size in terms of the thickness and the width, and it is challenging to get it in there, but it will fit, and the battery ejections are probably not going to happen. Once you get the battery in there, you'd have to kind of finagle the battery connector in here. It will work, and you want to put this on the same side as the connector like this. That's the only way that it would work. Now, I did try to use this a little bit higher capacity battery. Here's a 650. I forget which one this came with. One, I think it was an Eachine model. It's a little bit longer. It's about the same width, but it's about 9/10 of a millimeter thicker. So you can't really see it here until you pull the calipers out, but it's almost a millimeter thicker. It does not fit in here. I know there are other GNB batteries now that are longer than this, like 660, I believe, is one, I believe. I'll link it in the description, that are the same dimensions in terms of the width and the thickness, but they're just longer. So if you're looking for more capacity for longer flying, there are batteries available that will fit, because it's basically the length doesn't matter, it's the width and the thickness of the battery to fit into that strap. And if you can match that, any batteries that same width and thickness of this one will fit in here, and you'll get a little bit more flight time if you want to go up. But basically, you're going to add more weight. You're going to lose, basically you're going to trade agility for a little bit more flight time. But if you just want to cruise around, just want longer flights, then yeah, sure, why not go for it. Longer batteries should fit in here no problem, as you can see. Definitely more into the back and in the front, but you do have to worry about this connector length here, because it has to bend around, and you need a little bit of slack there to get into that connector. Otherwise, the battery's gonna stick out in the front, and it might show up in your camera view, but probably not too likely with that camera angle. All right, so this is how much it weighs. It's 25.8 grams by itself. With the 1S450, we're coming in at 38.6. So this is significantly heavier than the Flywoo. Flywoo is coming in at 21.6 without the battery. So 21.6 versus 25.7. And, it's interesting here, if we get into the comparisons, you have a slightly bigger motor on the Flywoo, a weight of 2.4, a little bit lower kV, 16,500 kV, same props. The weight's significantly less. You have a bigger video transmitter here on the Flywoo with 350 milliwatts, which you're going to need for that Express LRS receiver here. You're going to get way more video range, way more control range on this setup, and it weighs less and it has longer flight times in comparison. So if you're on the same 450, you can probably squeeze out another 1 or 2 minutes on this one here versus the iFlight. And you get more video range and more control range if you want to go Express LRS. Of course, if you want FreeSky, then of course, go for this one. I think FreeSky is available for this one as well. In terms of the bigger motor and the lighter weight, you're going to feel a little bit more, I don't know, it feels like this is a little bit more control in the low end, not quite as much top end because of the lower kV motor. So I still feel like either one of these isn't great for acro or racing, really. It's just they're both, pretty much for flight time and for cruising around. You can do flips and rolls and tricks and stuff on both of these. Now with the geometry of this frame, of the Flywoo being sort of a dead cat, and the way the battery is balanced on here, I recommended to Flywoo that they change the frame so that the battery could be side mounted instead of front and back. And they did do that, so you may be lucky enough on a later batch to get a sideways mounted battery option. I'm going to hopefully get that soon so I can show you guys that, because I think that's going to, at least on the pitch axis, it's going to feel a little bit more responsive than with the battery forward and backwards on this particular frame. This one here, being 73 millimeters motor to motor, it's more or less an X-style frame. It's not going to make too much of a difference. You can try and finagle a sideways battery mount on the bottom there, but yeah, it might make a difference. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it'll make more of a difference in this because the motors seem to be closer together, front to back on the Flywoo, and in terms of like flying performance, not a whole lot of difference in my opinion. If you gave me one or the other and told me to guess which one was which, it would take me a while to figure out. Not knowing any other clues like props in view or the camera or something like that. Obviously, the camera will give it away. If you guys look at the field of view on the Flywoo, it's a much larger than the RunCam Atom camera. That will give it away. But assuming that cameras were the same, and I can't tell in terms of just flying performance, it would be harder to tell what the differences are between these two because the weights are similar and the performance is similar in terms of the power from the motor. I think the difference is going to come in the flight time. With the lower kV motor on the Flywoo and the less weight, you just get more flight time. And just if you add more weight, everything else being equal, your flight time is just going to be lower. It's just simple physics there. Really nothing, no rocket science there. Nothing really to explain. So obviously, the question is which one's better, which is best. That's kind of up to you to decide. I've given you all the details on what's different about them. If you want more flight time, you go for the Flywoo. If you want, if you maybe like prefer iFlight in terms of their customer support, their bigger company, etc., go for iFlight. There's not that much of a difference between the two models. It really kind of depends on what you want to go for. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. I think you guys can decide on your. You guys are smart enough to figure out which one's better. And yeah, if you're looking at this model, specifically the Nazgul Baby, and you're not sure about the 63mm or the 73mm, I would get the 73mm just because you just get more flight time, more performance. Overall, I think this is a better experience. But if you want, the smaller form factor, then and you're willing to trade that off for a lower flight time, yeah, go for it. That's just it all depends on your preferences. Everyone has a different preference for something, and just because someone else like me likes longer flight times doesn't mean that that's necessarily the best. It might not be the best for you, so just keep that in mind. Anyway, I'm gonna put the full flights for more like a shorter, more acro type of flight down in the video description, along with a sort of longer cruisy type of flight as well. So if you guys want to watch that in terms of like watching the entire flight in full screen, then yeah, go ahead and click those links down in the video description, as well as links to everything else down in the video description. So hopefully that will help you guys out in terms of making the decision on what's best for you. That's going to do it for this video, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.